Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good morning. It is 10 o'clock here in the morning, Saturday morning, April the 30th. I'm glad to be here. This is a worldwide epidemic of child abuse and human rights abuses, and we're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com, and I did pop the link into their chat room for what I wanted to talk about today. And, you know, I like to do this show just to talk about the issues going on around the world. Mostly I focus on national issues, North American issues, United States and Canada, as far as child abuse and human rights abuses, mainly focusing on child abuse. But there's a whole lot of stuff going on around the world, obviously. We all know this. That's just horrific, you know, and I just like to call attention to some of these articles that I see pop into my inbox. I was studying international community development for a while, and it was a great course and really opened up, you know, my eyes to what's going on around the world. I'd always been kind of aware of what's going on around the world, but I just it focused on human rights, child rights, and so it's just so important that we all keep in mind that those rights are on paper, and they don't mean much unless we're willing to stand up and protect them, and that includes our North American human rights. We have rights over here too, and that's the issue. Even in North America, these human rights that we're supposed to be enjoying, that everyone has a right to, the right to life, the right to an abuse-free life, the right to education, health care. So many people are not enjoying their human rights right here in the United States and Canada. But then you look around the world and you see the mess that these other people are in, and you just think, oh my God, you know, it just makes me aware that I'm just so glad that I don't live in those countries, really, to be honest with you. And that, you know, I wouldn't want to be born into one of those countries, and I wouldn't want to be a child growing up in one of those countries, and I wouldn't want to be a girl growing up in one of those countries, and I wouldn't want to be a woman in one of those countries, I tell you that. My goal is to go worldwide. I hope to be able to be up there with all the speakers out here who are, you know, forcing change, right? Creating and forcing change, and it needs to happen. And like that's what I want to do with the rest of my life. So this is what I will continue to do until the end of my days here on this earth. So I'm always looking at this stuff, whether it's national or international, you know, whether it's local or worldwide, right? This is an issue that just sits heavy on my heart, and I just feel like, why not be one more voice? You know, we know what the truth is, so why not speak it? You know what I mean? No one should be suffering these human rights abuses, whether it's a man, woman, or child. And I've always been aware of this as even a young girl, and then, you know, growing up in the 60s, 70s, 80s, you know, and then, you know, all the way to this day today. It's always been on my mind that people are suffering needlessly because mankind has evil in their hearts. That is all there is to it, man. It's all just mankind making a mess for mankind. And, you know, if we're not going to stand up and speak out against this stuff, we're going to eat our cornflakes and eat our pancakes, like I say almost on every Saturday show, and pretend that the world's a great place. We got something wrong with us. You know what I mean? Like, this is pathetic that this stuff is happening to people around the world. I guess it's just that I have a conscience and I'm aware that while I'm sitting in my apartment, hanging out, doing my thing, there's people around the world dying, suffering, being mistreated, and especially the most vulnerable, which are children and babies and children. And in many of the countries, women's rights are just such a mess that they're just non-existent. And, you know, and then even in North America, right here in our own neighborhoods, in our own backyards, this stuff is going on. And I just think this is absolutely unacceptable. And I don't mind speaking out against it, and I'm not afraid to stand up and say it. So a lot of people, you know, you lose a lot of friends along the way doing this type of stuff, right? I mean, people don't want to hear this. People don't want to hang around with people who are talking about this kind of stuff because it's a downer, right? They want to go to the store and have fun and shop, and they want to think about fun things and eat their dinner. I can understand that. I like to do that too. But I also don't forget these people. Every day I don't forget these people out here. And I think where the issue lies, you know, it's the fact that we need to remember these people and speak out against human rights abuses and child abuse, and we can still have a good life and go shopping. And, you know, if we're having a good life, that's great. Many people aren't. But if we are, that's wonderful. But, you know, to remember these people and not forget about them, right? This first article is from www.plusnews.org, and this just popped into my inbox because I have all this information coming into my inbox all the time regarding human rights and child rights issues around the world. And so I don't really have to search for a lot of it because I set it up to receive this stuff in my inbox, so I don't have to go looking for it, which saves me a lot of time. And this particular article says, Kenya, fight against child sex tourism needs a boost. It's from IRIN Plus News, Global HIV /AIDS News and Analysis. And this article was posted April 28th from Mombasa. It says Kenya, fight against child sex tourism needs a boost. And they said when police in Kenya's coastal tourist city of Mombasa conduct night raids, it is not unusual for a large number of sex workers arrested to be under 18. The government faces a struggle to end a trade that many young girls see as a fast way out of poverty and into a more glamorous life. Munira, that's her name, I guess that's the name that they're using for this article. Munira spends her days looking for customers at the city's Kenyatta public beach. Just 15, she already has one child and is the sole breadwinner for her household. My widowed mother lost both her hands while working at a steel processing factory in Mombasa, forcing me to do what I am doing, she told Iron Plus News. And Munira says she has been selling sex for 6 months and has already slept with several men, mainly tourists. Most of her clients prefer sex without a condom. And when asked if she was aware of the risks of HIV, she struggled and admitted she had never been for an HIV test. According to Grace Odembo, a field coordinator with the NGO Solidarity with Women in Distress, Solwodi, many of the girls on the streets have limited formal education and therefore little chance of gainful legal employment. She said, quote-unquote, beach boys, young men who hang around the beaches acting as pimps for tourists seeking young girls, and were paid handsome commissions, fueling the cycle of child sex work. This large number of small girls you see loitering along the beaches looking for wazungu, white men, and even those engaging in legitimate businesses such as selling curios, they fall prey to beach boys who tell them they'll be introduced to perfect rich suitors, only to have them end up in the arms of sex pests instead, Odembo said. And according to a 2006 study by the government and UN Children's Fund, as many as 30% of teenage girls in the coastal towns of Diani, Kilifi, Malindi, and Mombasa were involved in casual sex work, and more than 10% of girls began transactional sex before the age of 12. The study also found that 35.5% of all sex acts involving children and tourists took place without condoms. In 2004, Kenya introduced the Code of Conduct for the Protection of Children Against Sexual Exploitation in Travel and Tourism to create awareness and prevent commercial sexual exploitation of children. However, the code seems to have done little to deter tourists seeking sex with minors. Members of Kenya's tourism sector say poverty is the main reason young girls turn to sex work and why it is so difficult to fight the phenomenon. Quote-unquote, the parents, most of whom happen to be poor, instead encourage their daughters to sell sex so as to supplement the family earnings, said Titus Kangani, a chairman of the Kenya Association of Hoteliers. In many cases, a guardian sides with the accused whenever sexual abuse charges are brought. That's what they said there. Out-of-court settlements are the norm in such cases, with paying off families of young girls to avoid jail terms. They said action needed. Tourism Minister Najib Balala told Iron Plus News it was important to rid the coast of its reputation of a haven for child sex tourism. This embarrassing tag must be dealt with right from the community level. It is a cartel that needs so much attention if we have to win. He said it has cost the region and country credible tourists and investors who now see the country as a sex destination, quote unquote. And Balala said the government was putting more effort into adhering to the code of conduct by canceling the business licenses of establishments allowing tourists to check in with underage girls. Solwadi counsels young women and offers alternative income through microfinance loans. However, its resources are limited, and for many girls, the small loans from NGOs are no match for the income they earn from wealthy tourists. So they said that poverty is key. Odembo said the government needed to be more vigilant in keeping young girls off the streets, and the government needs to come up with enough rescue centers within the region. She said they should also get to the bottom of why a child found loitering on the beach isn't attending school. According to James Weru, Programs Director for the NGO African Pro-Poor Tourism Development Center, tackling poverty is key to ending child sex tourism. Tourism is one of Kenya's biggest income earners, but less than 20% of this income trickles down to local economies, and as a result, locals remain very poor, he said. The government needs to spread the income out to benefit the locals so that there is less temptation to go into sex work. He noted that it will also be important to enforce adherence to the Code of Conduct and to back this up with serious legal consequences for defaulters. We also need to carry out education for tourists and ensure that they are getting the right kind of tourists. Weru added, many governments have lists of pedophiles who are blacklisted from entering their countries, but we have no such measures in Kenya. And so That's the end of that article. But it's very, very sad, and I wouldn't want to be a poor girl over in Kenya or in any other country really around the world other than North America. I tell you that. There's just no, there's just no infrastructure set up to help these people because their countries are so poor, and they really haven't had a timeline, a time frame to get things organized and orchestrated. So these little kids, these little children, or these little girls mainly, are out on the on the beaches, out selling their bodies. And this is the sad thing is this is the norm, right? This is not just a sort of a rare case. I mean, this is what's going on in Asia, most of especially Southeast Asia, and lots of parts of Asia, lots of parts of Africa, and many parts of the world. I would venture to say everywhere in the world. It's going on in Las Vegas. That's why I don't promote Las Vegas. Las Vegas, Nevada is one of the biggest havens for child sex tourism on the planet. And, you see those little kids out there. I've been to Vegas. I've been to Vegas as a kid and I was actually, what do you want to call that? I was actually solicited by a man because he thought that I was a child prostitute, right? Because I was on my own in Vegas at like 12 years old. I should have never been on my own, but that's how my mother was, just kicked me out and off I go. So, that's the thing. Luckily, I was saved by another man who saw what was going on. But the thing is, there's lots and lots of child sex child prostitutes in Las Vegas who are young kids, boys and girls, because they've run away from home. They're on the streets, and I would venture to say there's probably some parents selling their kids out there too. And it's very, very sad that's going on, around the world. It's really absolutely pathetic that it's going on here in North America. And people say, well, if these people would stop selling their bodies, we wouldn't have these issues. That's just not the truth. If people would stop seeking children for sex purposes, you know what I mean, then we wouldn't have these problems. How can you sell your body if nobody will buy it? Right? I mean, they're always trying to turn the coin to make the victim look like the one who's responsible. And and really truthfully, if nobody's buying, what would be the point of selling their body? They wouldn't be able to. And of course, they'd have to find another way to make a living in these other countries because obviously they're trying to make money. They're trying to make money for their daily bit of bread or some sort of crumb that they're going to get, right? So they have to sell their bodies, which is absolutely pathetic. This is very, very sad. It's very, very wrong. And, it's just pathetic that people are doing this and that the world is still in this kind of a mess as it has been for forever, right? There's just no reason for it. There's absolutely no reason for it, but it's just that people are too caught up in their own stuff, their own garbage, so they don't want to reach out and help. There's so many people within communities who have money who can help. And there's a portion of them that do help, and there's a portion of them that don't help. And so it is rather unfair, and I'm not socialistic really, but I'm just saying that people, there's got to be an answer, and governments really need to find out what those answers are and fix these issues within their own governments, right, within their own countries, because this is really pathetic. You know what I mean? That children are ending up sex slaves, really. And even in North America, that's what really bothers me. I mean, you see how many children who go missing. How many of those children in the United States and Canada that go missing end up in the child sex slave trade? Quite a few of them, probably, if not 99% of them. You know what I mean? Where are these children, and where have they gone? Where are these missing children? And this is the thing. They're involved in the sex slave trade in North America. That tells you how many sick people there are in the world. They tell you there's a whole lot of sick people in the world, and people think, well, who are these sick people? Well, they live right next door to us. They're not going to tell you that they go out and use children sexually or that they look for children to use sexually. They're not going to tell you that. But these are people living right with us. They're living across the street. They're living in our towns. They're living in our cities. They're living they're living amongst us. They work with us, but they're not going to tell you that they were involved with abusing a child sexually. Then nobody's going to go up to somebody and say, "Oh yeah, this is what I do in my spare time," right? Because it's illegal. They can be arrested. They can be, so they're not going to tell you. And they work with us. They go to the stores. We see them in the shopping stores. I'm sure of it. We see them in the grocery stores. We see them everywhere because you know why? They are everywhere. And the sad fact is that there's so many child sexual predators and pedophiles out there that live and work amongst us, you know what I mean, that are abusing children daily, or as often as they can get. hold of them, and then they come to work, and you would never know, right? It's absolutely pathetic. It's absolutely it's just a condition of man's heart, honestly, being completely evil, right? Because there's no way that a child could be even construed to be a sex toy, right? So I don't understand why anybody would seek a child for sexual purposes. I was abused sexually as a child, so there you go. I don't understand why anybody would want to do that to a child, right? Like, this is ridiculous. Children should be allowed to be children, and adults can do whatever they're into with adults and leave the children out of it. Because children should be allowed to grow up and explore their own sexuality in their own good time when they feel comfortable with their peers, not with some 50-year-old man who just wants to have sex with them and every other person or child of that age they can get their hands on. This is a sexual perversion. But there's a whole lot of people out here, believe it or not, that live across the street from us and down the block and around the corner who think that this is what life is all about, is having sex with children. Now, this makes me sick to my stomach, and I tell you what, I will continue to speak out against this stuff as long as I'm on the planet. Thank God gave me a voice. Hallelujah, I'm so glad, because I don't mind. I don't mind standing up and speaking out against this stuff. This just makes me mad, and it makes me more angry that people don't stand up and say something about this. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people that do. Thank God, I know a lot of them. But there's a whole lot of other people that just sit by and they know that a child's being abused. They're doing it themselves, or whatever. And, there's no help for that child, right? And it's just absolutely pathetic that people think this is okay. And I just hope and pray they bust them all. That's what I say. Every time they do bust somebody, I'm so happy. Well, I know that Canada actually set up this thing within the last year or so, that the government, that anybody caught involved in the child sex trade, industry, having sex with children overseas, any Canadian that's caught is so busted. They have really stepped up the laws. They really beefed it up, and they made it very clear to any Canadian who travels overseas to look for any kind of sexual exploitation of any type in any country will be brought to the fullest, brought up and sentenced to the fullest extent of the law. And I tell you, I'm so happy. That makes me so happy. And I wish that other countries would really enforce that too, and really, crack down on this stuff. Because this is, and people say, well, if these children aren't going to sell in their bodies, how are they going to live? Well, this is the sad fact, is that people got to start coming up with answers. Just to leave a child in a situation because it's the only way they can get a scrap of crumbs for their breakfast is not helping the child. I tell you that. They're going to end up with AIDS, and they're going to die. They're just going to be killed. They're going to die. You know what I mean? So they're not saving their lives by saying, oh, well, if these kids aren't selling their bodies, how are they going to live? That's ridiculous. That is like that. People who say things like that is an excuse to say, well, we shouldn't have to fix it because, look, it's working. They're actually getting a meal. Well, how are they having to get a meal? By having sex with adults. These are little children. You know what I mean? This is absolutely ridiculous that anybody should be forced to have sex with somebody to try to feed themselves for the day. Now, this is wrong, and anybody who thinks like that is wrong. And so that's why I'm saying, speak out against it, do whatever you can, get the information, and do what you can to, promote proper ways of thinking, right? Because that's not proper way to think about this stuff, you know what I mean? Like, there's just nothing right about that. That is all wrong. And these governments and other people that have the ability to help their people, they need to get on it, and they need to come up with something that's going to work, right? Instead of just leaving these kids in the mess, right? This is horrible. Now, this next article comes from irinnews.org, www.irinnews.org, and this is it's the Humanitarian News and Analysis, right? A service of the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, and this one is Afghanistan, virginity-related penalties extremely unfair. This is posted on 26th of April, Kabul, by IRIN, I-R-I-N, and it says the penalties that Afghan women suffer whenever allegations of premarital sex and loss of virginity emerge, including death, are extreme, discriminatory, and not in the penal code, activists said. I saw, quote unquote, I saw a woman who was publicly humiliated and tortured because she had allegedly lost her virginity before her wedding night, said Soraya Subrang, a women's rights commissioner at the Afghanistan Independent Human Rights Commission, AIHRC. Extrajudiciary penalties, she added, were prevalent and deep-rooted in the country. Medical workers are often called in to prove a woman's virginity, a requirement for women preparing for marriage. And virginity and adultery tests are part of our normal work, said Del Akamahubi, a medical expert in Kabul. But there are few facilities and a shortage of female experts to undertake very intimate tests. The tests involve an examination of the vagina to see whether a girl's or a woman's hymen is intact, but experts say it can be torn by factors other than intercourse. When forced or coerced, according to Amnesty International, virginity tests degrade women and are a form of torture. But absolutely. But especially when it's done in this case, we're not talking. It's not a checkup to make sure that it's not like having over here in North America and many parts of the world, women will go for tests to make sure that everything is fine, pap tests and different things like that, and to a gynecologist. And in the safety of a gynecologist's office, they're not looking at you with some sort of judgment like, or are you a virgin or are you not? You know what I mean? Like, it's just such a better situation. These people, they're just brought in and their virginity is questioned, and these people are already looking at them as if they're guilty. You know what I mean? I'm sure of it. This is absolutely horrific. They said, but among Afghan communities, failing the test can result in so-called honor killings, an underreported crime usually carried out by the families and relatives who believe a young girl or woman has brought shame on them. And this is the quote-unquote honor killings recognize a man's right to kill a woman with impunity because of the damage that her immoral actions have caused to family honor. The UN Assistance Mission in Afghanistan, UNAMA, reported in December 2010. Such murders, it added, were simply based on deep-rooted cultural beliefs and not on religion. So they said men usually go unpunished for honor killings, Subrang told Iran, but could a woman kill her husband for illegitimate sexual relations? No way, right? That's the thing. Men can be, as unfaithful as they want and go out and sleep around, and they're not going to be brought up on charges. And a woman can't kill her husband because of that, but he has, he goes unpunished for honor killings, right? That's what they're saying. And I mean, we have honor killings in North America too. This is absolutely ridiculous. Honor, she says, Rayla was forcefully taken to a medical examiner on her wedding night after her husband accused her of losing her virginity and beat her. The examination showed she had lost her virginity long before the marriage, and the 22-year-old was handed over to the judiciary for prosecution on charges of adultery. And Rayla's incarceration has devastated her family. They have to pay back almost $10,000 US to their former son-in-law, which was allegedly spent on the wedding ceremony. They have to put their house up for sale and decided to leave this neighborhood because they cannot live with the dishonor, said one relative who spoke on condition of anonymity. I can't say that word, anonymity. While virginity is not mentioned in the country's penal system and other laws, says activists and lawyers, hundreds of women like Rayla unfairly face serious formal and informal penalties for the alleged illicit loss of this cultural requirement. Sexual intercourse outside marriage is a sin under Islamic jurisprudence, and the Afghan law is largely derived from it. Virginity is a natural stamp, said Malawi Mohammed Qasim, a member of the Supreme Court's Penal Bureau. When it is lost and the reason is proved to be illegitimate sexual relations, it implies adultery, which should be punished. He said, adding that a married person caught having sex outside marriage, male or female, could be sentenced to 3 to 5 years in prison, while married adulterers received heavier penalties. And they said unfair penalties. Women's rights activists say the adultery law has too many problems and is mostly used only against women. Well, that's the case, obviously. In some cases, the women are victims of rape. That's right. And sexual abuse. You got that. That's what happened to me. The law does not clearly distinguish between rape and consensual sexual intercourse and treats rape victims as criminals and adulterers, said Zabrang from the HRC. Although concealed and underreported, rape is a crime that occurs across the country every day. UNAMA said in a separate report in July 2009, it is the girl or woman, the rape victim, and not the perpetrator who carries the shame of the crime, the report said. Demanding that men too face the law, Sheila Samimi, an advocacy officer with the Afghan Women's Network, said, can a girl ask medical experts to test whether her would-be husband had sex before marriage, and when proved wrong, would officials prosecute the man as they do a woman? With every female victim of adultery, she added, there was a man or men who rarely face judgment. So this is the thing, right? This is horrific, and I'm so thankful not to not be a woman in Afghanistan. I tell you that, but that's why I fight for them. That's exactly why I want to be a voice for the Afghan women and Afghan children, because especially girls, because they don't have anybody speaking up for them, and many of those people they're born into this. That's their culture, that's their heritage, and of course they're going to take some. They're going to have some happiness about their culture and their heritage. I know I do from my own, and so it's but they don't want to be abused. They don't want to be mistreated. They want to be treated with respect and dignity, just like everybody else. These are mothers, these are aunts and uncles and grandmothers, and so many times these women, are actually, if they're found, if they're accused of being adulterers and out having sex before marriage and this and that, their mother-in-laws from the other side, their husband or their future husband's mother-in-law will kill them. Because this is ridiculous. So even if it's not the husband, it's the husband's family, and sometimes even their own family will kill them, supposedly because of the dishonor. And the thing is like these people have every right to the right to life. You know what I mean? There's human rights on this planet that say that we all enjoy the right to life. So how dare these people kill these people and judge them, as if they know all. You know what I mean? This just makes me so angry, and it's like living. It's before the Stone Age. As a matter of fact, this never even used to happen. This all came about since Al Qaeda. You know what I mean? This is all just fundamentalist garbage. It has nothing actually to do with their religion. It's ridiculous. This is some sort of crazy stuff that's going on, and it never should happen. And of course, these people who are 20, 30 years old in Afghanistan, they think this is the way it's always been because their history was destroyed. Right? They burned down the books, they burned down the libraries, they killed the teachers, and and the rest of the teachers that could escape got away and had to leave the country. And so all the education was gone, and so all these people that are in their 20s, 30s, and 40s think that this is the way it's been in Afghanistan forever. But the rest of the world who knows, because we have the history books and we know what's been going on over there, knows that this is just relatively new. This is just since the 1980s. So, their lives, they used to be free. They didn't have to walk around a burqa. They never had to walk down the street escorted by a male, relative. This is ridiculous. They didn't have to ask to do anything. They were they were actually more westernized than any of the countries over there. Afghanistan was quite well westernized because it was the trade route. You know what I mean? Everybody had gone through there and left their mark. We're talking from China all to Rome. Like everybody had been through there doing their thing, and they were actually quite worldly people until Al Qaeda and all of these, the Taliban and all these insane groups actually went in there and took over their country and destroyed their history and really destroyed their heritage, right? Because these people are now thinking that they are somebody that they never were before, right? So they have a bunch of culture stuff that going on that they think has been there forever, when actually they're just living Iran's culture. They're not even living their own. Their culture was replaced by Iran's culture, and that's what Romans did. I mean, the Romans replaced a lot of people's cultures too. So we're not picking on Muslims. I mean, the Romans were responsible for replacing that whole area's culture for a long time, right? And many groups will do that. Many societies will do that, civilizations. And the thing is it's absolutely ridiculous. These people don't even know their own history, and they don't even know that this was absolutely only been going on for the last 30 years. But their history was destroyed. Education is everything, you know what I mean? Like you become educated, and help other people to become educated about this stuff. This is all very serious, and these people's lives do count. They matter to me, and all because if I don't say that, then that means that none of you matter to me. And by saying that, that's not a good human response. I mean, people around the world do matter to me because I feel very much connected to the world and to the people of the world. And so this is ridiculous that this stuff is going on. So to support small groups, especially grassroots groups who are doing great stuff, because they're able to go into these countries and make a difference, right? And so support the little tiny grassroots organizations who are making a difference and doing things to promote education and promote human rights and whatnot within these different countries. Pick a country that just sticks to your heart and you just feel like you have to get involved. Pick any country out there and get involved to make a change and get involved to educate the people around you about what's going on, because our human rights in North America are on the line because people will not stand up for them. Make sure that you do, because I'm telling you, we'll end up worse off than these other people in these other countries. So make sure that you do stand up for human rights and child rights, and look around to make sure that people are not being mistreated around you, right? And then if they are, do something about it. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Talk to you later. Have a good weekend.